Hey everyone, in this video we can talk about a problem from CCC contest, problem Junior 4, flipper. Firstly, I'm gonna read the question, then we're gonna solve it together. You are trying to pass the time well at a optometrist. You notice there's a grid of 4 numbers. Use 1, 2, 3, 4. You see lots of mirrors and lenses at optometrist and wonder how flipping the grid horizontally or vertically would change the grid. Specifically, a horizontal flip would take the original grid of 4 number and result in 3, 4, 1, 2. A vertical flip would take the original grid of 4 number and result in 2, 1, 4, 3. Your task is to determine the final orientation of the numbers in the grid after a sequence of horizontal and vertical flip. So you can pause the video to read the question specifically by yourself. Okay, now I assume you have finished reading and understand this problem, at least understand what the problem is asking for. Okay, so the input basically is a line of command that we're gonna have to that command us to do instruct us to flip the grid. So basically just horizontal, vertical. Only 2 types of flip. And horizontal flip, we can understand it as flipping between rows. So the first row goes to the second and second goes to the first. And the vertical flip, we can understand it as a swap between columns. So the rows order are still the same, but the column changes. So the first column gonna go to the second, and the second gonna be in the first column. So 1, 3 gonna go to the right, and 2, 4 gonna go to the left. Okay, let's see how we're gonna code this. So firstly, you're gonna create a static method. The main method, and create a scanner to take in the input. So we're gonna have a string of string input, or we can call instruct, but I will just leave it to input. .scanner.next line. So what this line is to get how to spell instruction? Something like this. I don't know. Instruction from the input from the scanner. So after that, before we just do the operation, we're gonna create 2 static method. One called vertical. So yeah, so the type should be void. There's no return type. And what we need to pass in is an int to the array called the grid. So for vertical flips, we're gonna have two temp arrays. So because we cannot just like switching the element of sub-array directly, so we're gonna take some out, like this, and we're gonna reorder them into an array that just like reorder the columns. So remember, it is important to notice that our row doesn't change. So if it was the first row, the number was in the first row, it will still remain in the first row, but its position in the row changes. It means its column position changes when we do this, when we do the operation. And now we're gonna put those array into the 2D array. So it's a grid. So you might be wondering, what is the grid here? The grid is, we're gonna define the grid as so the grid here represents this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is the original grid, and by implementing this method, we can just make change to the grid, and we need another method called horizontal. Still passing the int. Okay. So for horizontal, we are just switching to element of the grid. So you can also, it's like switching the string, but we can still understand it as switching the element. So for switching element in general, we need to create a container or additional space to store one of them, so we won't lose it during the process of switching. So let's say we store the first row, and we can change the first row to the second row. So if we didn't have this line, we already lost the first row, and both rows gonna be exactly the same. However, we can still manage to change the second row to the temp, and yeah, that's our operation we need to do. Okay, here back to our main method, we need to go use a for loop to access each element's character, so we know if element is h or v. So if it is h, not element, each character. If a character is h, we're just gonna make a horizontal flip. If the character is a v, we're just gonna make the vertical flip. So to access each character, we're gonna use a for loop. So if we're gonna check if that char equals to h, v or h, if input char at the index. So in this case, the index is I. So if it unequal to or equals to h, what we're gonna do is we're gonna horizontally flip with our method horizontal. Else, because there can only be two type of characters, h or v, so if it's not h, it has to be v. So we're just gonna flip it vertically. So after the process of the the flipping, we're just gonna use for loop to print everything out, print the final form. It should be not hard. Remember that here we're gonna use print instead of print line because we are not trying to print a whole line. We are not trying to print up and start a new line immediately because we are trying to print a row of number. So we're gonna use print function and print j plus a space separating each element. And after we print a row, we're gonna start a new line by printing nothing, print line nothing. So that's how we switching rows, and I think it's gonna work. So let's try h3. And as you can see, the answer matches with the output for sample input. So let's run our code in the DMOJX grader. And as you can see, it finished all the test case correctly. So I think there are some important takeaway from this question. First one, you need to know how to spell instruction. The second one, you need to understand how to swap two elements in an array without losing one of them. So if you just ignore this line, it doesn't work because both elements will be the same. So the index of 0 will be the index of 1. But if you trying to change the grid's first index, index 1 to its 0th index, it won't work. Both index will have exactly the same element because element as the index 0 is already equals to, it's already the element in the grid of 1, index 1. So before we change any of them, we need additional storage for one of them, and then we're gonna change that one to the other, and at the end we're gonna change the other to the temp. That's how we're gonna flip. That's how we're gonna change elements safely without losing anything. And you learned something from this video. Thank you. Bye.